The night the blood moon rose over the cursed forests of Eldrath, the wind carried whispers of prophecy. Villagers huddled in their homes, muttering prayers to gods they barely remembered. Somewhere deep in the shadows, a child was born. A child who would challenge the power of the Alpha. Her cries cut through the storm, sharp and defiant, and the village seer gasped at the omens. Her destiny is not simple, the old woman whispered. She is born to reject him, yet she will touch his soul. Lyra's first memory was of the storm, the wind tearing through the trees and lightning splitting the sky. Her mother's hands had been steady as she held her, but fear was written in her eyes. From the moment she could walk, Lyra was aware of a power in her blood, a fire that could not be tamed. She learned early that in Eldrath power drew danger, and none more dangerous than the Alpha. Kyle, the Alpha King, ruled the kingdom with a fearsome reputation. His dark eyes seemed to pierce the hearts of men and beasts alike, and his very presence made the forest bend and twist. No one dared oppose him, no one except the child that fate had marked. Lyra grew up on the edge of his domain, learning to hunt, fight, and survive. She had friends, a small circle of villagers who knew her secret. But every shadow, every rustle in the trees reminded her that Kale watched. He did not move openly. He did not strike. But she could feel him, a weight upon her spirit that both terrified and fascinated her. Their first encounter came when she was 16. She had ventured into the sacred glade, seeking herbs for a protective charm. The forest was alive with whispers and the air shimmered with unseen magic. A sudden shadow fell across the clearing and she froze. "Lyra," a voice said, low and commanding. It was a voice that belonged to no ordinary man. It was the Alpha. Her heart hammered. She had been warned, trained, and yet she could not step back. Her instinct was to fight, to flee, to reject, but curiosity held her in place. "You should not be here," Kyle said, his dark eyes scanning her with something beyond mere interest, something that made her pulse quicken and her mind sharp with caution. "I am no one's property," Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. "Not yours, not anyone's." Kale's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Yet destiny has claimed you." She shook her head. "I do not belong to destiny. I belong to myself." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Kale stepped closer and Lyra braced herself. She had been trained for confrontation, but not for the way his presence pressed against her. A quiet force that demanded acknowledgement. "You are strong," he said, almost thoughtfully. "Stronger than anyone I have ever known. But strength alone does not save you from what is coming." Lyra's hands went to the talismans at her belt, charms to protect against dark magic, but even as she touched them, she felt his power brushing against her soul. It was not anger or hate. It was hunger, need, something dark and consuming that made her instinctively recoil. "I will not be claimed," she said, her voice rising. "Do not think that because you are feared I will bend to you." Kale's eyes darkened, but not with anger. Instead, there was a storm behind them, a flicker of pain and desire that he could not hide. He took a step back almost reluctantly, and the forest seemed to exhale around them. "Perhaps," he murmured, "but you cannot run from what the blood binds. One day you will see that rejecting me will not free you, it will only make the darkness stronger." Lyra did not answer. She turned and fled through the glade, her heart pounding, her mind racing. The forest seemed alive, shadows twisting to follow her, and she felt the unmistakable weight of Kale's gaze on her back. Days turned into weeks, and Kale did not approach her again, but Lyra could feel his presence everywhere. The villagers whispered of the Alpha's interest, of his obsession with the girl born under the blood moon. But she refused to fear him openly, refused to give him the power that desire demanded. Then came the night of the first test. A rival clan of sorcerers had come to challenge Kale's dominion, using dark magic to breach the borders of his forest. Lyra had been gathering herbs when the ground trembled, and she saw shadows moving unnaturally, twisting shapes that did not belong to this world. Kale appeared as if from the mist itself, the Alpha King in all his dark glory. The ground seemed to bow to him, the air charged with his power. Lyra did not run this time. Instead, she stood her ground, instinctively ready to fight. "You should leave," Kyle warned, his voice sharp like a blade. "This is not your battle." "I fight for myself," Lyra said. "Not for you, not for anyone else." Kyle studied her, and for a moment the darkness in his eyes softened. There was admiration there, hidden beneath the storm of his power. "You are fearless," he said, "but the world is not kind to those who walk alone." The battle erupted, shadows clashing with fire, magic and steel colliding in a symphony of destruction. Lyra fought beside Kale, her movements precise, her instincts sharp. Every strike she made was against the enemy, but every glance at Kale brought a jolt of awareness she could not explain. He was a force of darkness, yet he fought with a strange grace that made her heart ache and her mind spin. When the last shadow fell, silence returned to the forest. The enemy had been vanquished, but the price was heavy. Trees were scarred, the air thick with the scent of smoke and magic. Lyra's breaths came in sharp gasps, and she realized she had never fought so close to anyone, not even her closest friends. Kale approached, his eyes searching hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. "You survived," he said quietly, "and yet I wonder if you truly understand what it means to stand here with me." "I understand enough," Lyra said, straightening her shoulders, "that I do not belong to you and I will not be claimed. Not now, not ever." Kale's hand brushed her hair almost imperceptibly, and she flinched. "Perhaps," he murmured, "but your soul, it stirs something in me I cannot name. Something I thought I had lost to this world long ago." Lyra's heart raced, a tumult of fear and fascination. She wanted to run, to push him away, yet the pull between them was undeniable. She had trained her whole life to reject him, to resist the destiny that blood and prophecy had written. But in that moment, she glimpsed the storm behind his eyes, a storm that mirrored her own fire. "You must leave now," Kale said finally, stepping back, "before the night deepens and shadows claim more than just the forest." Lyra nodded, her body tense, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. As she turned to go, she felt his gaze follow her, heavy and consuming, and a shiver ran down her spine. The night stretched on, and the blood moon hovered above the forest, a silent witness to the bond that had begun. Dark and unspoken, Lyra knew one truth that night, one she could not deny. Rejecting the Alpha would not be simple. His dark love had already begun to consume a part of her, whether she accepted it or not. And somewhere in the shadows, Kale watched her disappear into the trees, a rare, almost human expression crossing his face. He whispered to the wind, a vow and a warning entwined. "You may hate me now, but the blood binds us, and the darkness waits for no one. Your choice will come, and when it does, your soul may be the only thing that can save me, or destroy us both." The wind howled through the cursed forest, carrying the weight of prophecy, destiny, and a bond that neither Lyra nor Kale could yet fully understand. And so the first chapter of their entwined fates ended, leaving both hearts restless and the shadows watching with patient, eternal hunger. The dawn broke over Eldrath like a whisper of hope through the scarred forests. Lyra moved carefully through the morning mist, her steps light but deliberate. Though she had survived the first test of the Alpha, she knew that destiny had not yet released her. The shadows clung to her, reminders of the bond forming between her and Kyle, a bond neither fully understood nor wished to acknowledge. Kyle watched her from the edge of the forest, unseen but present, a dark silhouette against the rising sun. His eyes, usually so sharp and commanding, softened as he observed her. She was fierce, unyielding, yet there was a fragility in her courage that drew him closer than he dared admit. The curse that had once chained his soul now quivered at the presence of someone who could match his strength and challenge his darkness. Lyra did not know he watched. She focused on preparing for what she knew would come, a test of their intertwined fates. The rival sorcerers who had attacked before had not retreated far. Their dark influence lingered like a disease in the forest. She needed to understand her own power if she were to face them again. As she gathered herbs near a stream, a sudden shadow moved behind her. Her hand flew to her dagger, but she froze when she realized it was Kale. He stepped into the light, not with menace but with something quieter, more intimate. "You train well," he said, voice low and steady. "But strength alone will not save you." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I do not need saving. I am not yours to save." Kyle smiled faintly, the corners of his lips betraying a rare warmth. "No, but we are connected whether we accept it or not. The prophecy is not kind, Lyra. It does not allow for independence, only for choice." Lyra's pulse quickened. Every encounter with him was a battle of wills. She wanted to resist, to flee, but the pull between them was undeniable. For the first time, she considered that rejecting him might not only challenge the curse but also deepen it. Their training was interrupted by a sudden tremor through the forest. Dark shadows coalesced into forms, sorcerers and beasts twisted by their magic. Kale's expression darkened. "They have returned," he said, his voice a mix of warning and determination, "and this time we face them together." Lyra nodded, her heart steady despite the fear that pricked at her chest. Side by side they advanced, Kale's presence both a shield and a fire at her back. Magic and steel clashed, the forest echoing with the cries of battle. Lyra moved with precision, her instincts sharper than ever. Yet she could not ignore the closeness of Kale. In the midst of chaos, their eyes met, and a wordless understanding passed between them. Survival depended not only on skill but on trust. After the battle, the forest was quiet again, though scarred and wounded. Lyra collapsed to her knees, exhaustion threatening to overcome her. Kale knelt beside her, not with dominance but with concern. "You fought well," he said quietly, "but you cannot carry this alone." "I do not need anyone to carry me," she whispered, looking into his eyes, seeing not only the darkness but also the pain and longing he tried to hide. Kale reached out, his hand hovering near hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Lyra felt the weight of his presence, not the threat, but the desire to protect, to connect, to redeem what had been broken in him. "Lyra," he murmured, "the curse. It does not define me entirely. There is a part of me that longs to be free, and perhaps you are the key." Her heart ached at his words. For so long she had trained to reject him, to resist the pull of fate and prophecy. But now, faced with the truth of his vulnerability, she understood something deeper. Love could be a force of redemption, not just destruction. Days passed, and their bond grew in quiet, almost imperceptible ways. They trained together, sharing stories of their pasts, the burdens they carried, and the fears that haunted their dreams. Lyra discovered that Kale's darkness was not born of cruelty, but of pain and the weight of a curse older than the kingdom itself. In turn, Kale saw in Lyra not just a challenge to his authority, but a light capable of piercing the shadows that had long consumed him. One evening, beneath the rising moon, they stood on a cliff overlooking the forest. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and rain, and the stars reflected in the river below like scattered jewels. "Do you ever wonder," Kale asked softly, "what life would have been without this curse, without destiny pulling us together?" Lyra met his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do. But I also know we cannot change what is. We can only choose how we face it." Kale's hand found hers, firm yet gentle. Lyra did not pull away. The connection between them was no longer a battle but a choice, a surrender to the reality of their entwined fates. Their peace was brief. The rival sorcerers had not been defeated entirely. In the heart of the forest, a dark storm gathered, unnatural and foreboding. Shadows twisted into monstrous forms, and whispers of curses long buried rose with the wind. Kale and Lyra stood ready side by side, knowing this battle would test not only their strength but the depth of their bond. The clash was unlike anything they had faced before. Magic and steel intertwined, the air thick with the scent of burning leaves and unspoken fear. Lyra felt Kale's power merging with hers, a strange harmony that neither had expected. Their attacks were synchronized, instinctive, a dance of trust and unspoken understanding. In the heat of battle, Lyra saw the truth of Kale's curse. It fed not on destruction, but on fear and isolation. The moment they trusted one another, the darkness faltered, giving way to light. With a final surge of courage, Lyra channeled her power, breaking the hold of the rival sorcerers and dispelling the lingering shadows. When silence returned, the forest was still, the moonlight bathing them in silver. Lyra leaned against Kyle, her body exhausted, her soul lighter than it had ever been. He looked down at her, eyes softened, no longer entirely shadowed. "You have saved more than the kingdom tonight," he said, voice low, reverent. "You have saved me." Lyra shook her head, a small smile on her lips. "We saved each other. For the first time, the Alpha King and the girl who had been born to reject him stood as equals, partners in strength, trust, and the beginning of something neither prophecy nor curse could fully define. Yet even in this moment of triumph, the horizon held a warning. The wind carried a whisper, soft but unmistakable. Destiny was not finished with them. A new shadow stirred beyond the mountains, unseen but present, a reminder that their story was far from over. Kyle's hand tightened around hers, his dark eyes scanning the distance. "The shadows may have been weakened," he murmured, "but the world will never stop testing those who dare to love in darkness." Lyra nodded, her heart steady, her mind resolute. "Then we will face it together." And so, beneath the blood moon that had first marked her birth, Lyra and Cale stood together, no longer hunter and prey, no longer oppressor and rebel, but two souls bound by choice, courage, and the dark, consuming love that had once threatened to destroy them both. The forest whispered around them, carrying their story into the night, a tale of fear, trust, and redemption that would become legend. And though the storm beyond the mountains waited, neither Alpha nor Rebel would face it alone. For in the darkness, they had found not only each other, but the power to change fate itself.